Welcome back. Before we start, the names and characters you're about to hear are fictional. This story came from my own ideas, shaped with the help of AI as a writing and tool, and read by an AI voice. Think of it the way a writer works with an editor. The concept, the direction, that's all mine. Now, if you've ever trusted someone a little too completely, this one's going to hit somewhere specific. All right, let's get into it.
I'm not the kind of person who turns a car around in the middle of the night over something he saw on the internet. I want to make that clear before I tell you the rest of this. Both hands on the wheel, radio off, the highway cutting through nothing but dark fields and the occasional wash of oncoming headlights. My phone was face down on the passenger seat, but the screen was still glowing through the case. This thin strip of light hitting the ceiling that I kept looking at and then not looking at. The clip was 11 seconds long. I'd watched it 4 times before I put the car in reverse and told my parents I had to leave. My dad said, "Tonight?" I said, "Yeah, tonight." He didn't push it. My dad is the kind of man who can read a room even when there's nothing in the room to read. He just walked me to the door, put one hand on my shoulder for about 2 seconds, and went back inside. My mom called after me, "Drive safe, Jamie." I drove. I told myself I was being rational. I told myself I wasn't the kind of man who shows up to a confrontation on the fumes of a 7-second crowd cam clip that some stranger posted on social media. I told myself a lot of things on that drive. But here's the problem with telling yourself things at midnight on an empty highway. The silence has a way of answering back. 3 weeks earlier, I asked Marissa if she wanted to meet my parents. Not meet in the casual sense, not some accidental run-in at a Sunday brunch. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, with a coffee going cold between us, and told her I wanted to take her home. That I wanted her in the house where I grew up, at the table where my family eats, with people who would actually matter to her if things kept going the way I thought they were going. She said she'd think about it. I should have registered that. I didn't. For context, I had never brought anyone home before. Not in a way that counted. My parents... My dad fixes cars, my mom teaches middle school English, they've been in the same house in Glenfield for 31 years. They're not the kind of people who make you feel like you're being evaluated. There's no performance involved. My mom makes too much food, and my dad falls asleep, watching whatever game is on, and by 10 o'clock you're just sitting in their living room like you belong there. I wanted Marissa in that room. That's how serious it was to me. She said yes about 4 days later. A weekend was picked. She had the date in her phone. 3 days before the trip, she called and said she couldn't make it. Her family had something. She didn't want to show up to meet my parents while her head was somewhere else. She said, and I remember this exactly, "I don't want the first time I walk into that house to be like this, James. When I meet them, I want to actually be present." It sounded so reasonable, I almost thanked her for it. That's the thing about Marissa. She's not messy. She doesn't blow up. She doesn't cry and beg forgiveness and then do the same thing 6 weeks later. She was just careful with her words, with how she packaged every choice she made. By the time she finished explaining anything to you, you felt like you'd arrived there yourself, like it had been your idea all along. I told her I understood. I went alone. Before I left, she sent me a photo. It was a selfie. Poor lighting, late afternoon, the kind of picture you take when you're killing time on a couch somewhere. She was in her olive jacket, the one she wore constantly, and the thin gold bracelet I'd given her for her birthday was on her left wrist, just barely in frame. The caption said, "Tired, but thinking of you. Have a safe drive." I looked at it for maybe 3 seconds and saved it. That was Friday evening. About 2 weeks before any of this, Marissa had mentioned Cole. We were in her apartment, eating dinner she'd mostly made, and I'd mostly washed dishes for afterward, and she brought him up the way you'd mention a news story. A little distant, a little amused, like it was happening to someone else. Her ex, Cole Mercer. She'd been with him for about 2 years before we started dating. She said he'd reached out. He was getting married, some woman named Hannah. The engagement was recent. And he wanted to clear the air before the wedding. Marissa made a face when she said it. Not a big face, just a small, tired one that said, "Isn't that such a Cole thing to do?" I said, "Are you going to meet him?" She said, "God, no. We said what we said. There's nothing to clear rift her." That's the honest answer. I believed her completely, and it didn't even cost me anything to do it. I'd remember that later. The first night at my parents' house was fine. Good, actually. My mom made her lasagna. My dad asked if I'd replaced the back brake pads on my car yet. I hadn't, and we watched half a game before I went to bed. Before I turned the light off, I texted Marissa, "Made it. Miss you already." She replied, "Miss you too. Sleep good." 4 words. No question about the drive. No question about my parents. No details. I told myself people text like that when they're exhausted. Saturday morning, I asked her, just softly, the way you'd check on someone, if she was doing okay. I said something like, "You seem a little quieter than usual. Is there anything I can do?" She replied, 3 hours later, "I'm fine, James. I just have a lot going on. You don't need to check in on me like I'm gonna break." I said I was just asking. She said, "I know, but when you say it like that, it kind of feels like I'm supposed to explain myself. I'm dealing with family stuff, remember? I don't want to feel like I have to report in." I put my phone in my pocket and went and helped my dad with something in the garage. That evening, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It took me a moment to figure out it was Talia, Marissa's friend. I'd met her twice, texting from a new number. "Hey, just checking in. Mary mentioned you're at your parents' place this weekend. She's going through it a little, but she's okay. She just doesn't do great with everyone needing stuff from her at once. You know how she gets." I read it twice. Then I thought, what does everyone needing stuff from her mean? I put the phone away, and I didn't answer so about it. Saturday night, my mom asked if she could say hello to Marissa over video. "Just for a minute," she said. "I want to see your face." I texted Marissa, "My mom wants to say hi for a second, if that's okay." She replied 8 minutes later, "I'm a mess right now. Can we do it another time? I look terrible and I'm in the middle of something. Tell her I said hi and I'm sorry." My mom said, "Oh, that's fine. Tell her not to worry." I passed it along. I sat at the dinner table and watched my mom clear the plates and thought about a girl who supposedly had a family situation blowing up, who didn't want to be on a 30-second video call. I didn't say anything. I helped clear the table. Later that night, I was in my old bedroom, the same twin bed, the same smell of old wood, and my dad's particular brand of pine cleaner, and I pulled up the conversation with Marissa. Not to investigate, just to look. Her messages came in clusters, 4 or 5 at a time, then nothing for 2 hours, then 4 or 5 more. The rhythm of someone who picks up their phone, fires off a round of responses, and then puts it down. Not the rhythm of someone managing a family crisis and ducking in and out of difficult rooms. The messages themselves were fine, normal. But they had no texture. No accidents. No, "Oh, I forgot to tell you," or "This just happened," or the kind of small nonsense that bleeds into texts when someone is actually living their day and you're part of it. These were clean. Curated. I thought, she types like she's editing herself. I didn't do anything with that thought. I just lay in the dark with it until I fell asleep. Sunday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I remembered the selfie. The one from Friday, right before I left. I pulled it up again, studied it this time. The lighting was wrong for her apartment. Too warm, too golden. Her apartment faces north. She never gets that kind of late afternoon light. And the angle, she was looking slightly off camera, toward something happening outside the frame. And her expression wasn't tired. It was occupied. Present. Somewhere. The bracelet was on her left wrist. The olive jacket was on her shoulders, not the hanger on her door, where she always left it when she was home for the night. The caption said, "Tired but thinking of you." She wasn't home. I didn't know where she was, but I knew she wasn't home. I set the phone down and poured the coffee and thought, I'm not looking for a fight. I just want to stop pretending I don't see what I see. That's when the messages came in. 3 of them. Different people. 2 from friends, 1 from a group chat I'd forgotten I was in. They all contained the same clip. A crowd cam. One of those wide-angle shots someone takes at a concert to capture the feeling of 10,000 people singing the same thing at the same time. Coldplay's Yellow. The kind of song that makes everyone close their eyes. Except in the bottom left corner of the frame, there were 2 people who weren't closing their eyes. She was in the olive jacket. He had his arm around her in a way that wasn't incidental, wasn't friendly. The kind of contact that has weight and history in it. Her head tilted slightly toward him, His face turned toward hers. The bracelet, my bracelet, was visible on her wrist. The clip was 11 seconds long. I watched it 4 times. Then I closed the app, set the phone face down on the bed, and sat very still for about 90 seconds. I didn't curse. I didn't throw anything. I just sat in my childhood bedroom with the sound of my mother making breakfast downstairs, and I thought, that's Cole Mercer. I recognized the jawline from the one photo of him I'd ever seen on her phone. A year ago. She'd shown me herself, laughing about something, saying, "Can you believe I dated this guy?" I'd looked at the photo for maybe 4 seconds. 20 minutes later, Marissa texted me. "Hey, you still up? I know you're at your parents', so probably not glued to your phone, all. Random, but did you see that crowd cam thing people are posting? Some couple at the Coldplay show went viral. Apparently they were really going for it, all. Anyway, hope you're having a good morning." I read it 3 times. She was telling me about the clip. She was gauging whether I'd seen it. She was covering ground before I could cover it myself. Dropping the story into my lap with her fingerprints nowhere on it. I thought about a girl who supposedly had a family emergency on Friday. I thought about a concert that happened on Saturday night. I thought about a clip that went up around 10 p.m. While my mom and I were watching half a game in the living room, while I was sending a goodnight text that came back in 4 words. I put the phone in my pocket and went downstairs and ate breakfast with my parents. I helped my dad with the oil on my car. I sat on the back porch with my mom for an hour and talked about nothing in particular. Then I said I had to head back. My dad said, "Tonight?" I said, "Yeah, tonight." He walked me to the door. 2 seconds, one hand on my shoulder. My mom called after me, "Drive safe, Jamie." I know this city well enough to take the back routes. I came in off the east side and looped around to her building instead of mine, because there are 3 things you can't do once someone has time to prepare. You can't unsee a cleaned-up story. You can't unhear a rehearsed answer. And you can't unknow the difference between someone being caught and someone choosing to tell the truth. I wanted to know which one this was. I pulled up outside her building just past midnight. The lobby was lit. The street was quiet. I almost didn't get out of the car. Then a cab turned onto the block. It stopped at the curb 30 feet in front of me. Marissa got out. She was still in the olive jacket. Her hair was down, a little wind loose. She was moving the way you move at the end of a night that was better than expected. Not drunk, not reckless, just light. Still buzzing with whatever the evening had been. She was alone. She paid the driver through the window and turned toward the building entrance. The wristband was on her right wrist, a paper wristband, the kind they stamp at the door of a venue to show you paid for entry. White, slightly crumpled, still on. She hadn't taken it off. She got to the lobby door, reached for her key card, looked up, saw me. The light in her face didn't go out all at once. It went out the way a match goes out. A small flicker, and then nothing. 5 full seconds where neither of us moved. Then she said, "James." Not a question. A calculation. I said, "Your family okay?" She opened her mouth, closed it. I said, "You should probably take that off." I looked at the wristband. She looked down at her wrist like she'd forgotten it was there. Maybe she had. Maybe that's the thing about a clean lie. You maintain it in your head, not on your body. We went upstairs. I don't know why. Somewhere in my body, I was still operating on the old protocol. You don't have a conversation like this in a lobby. You go inside. You sit down. You speak like adults. She went straight to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, both hands on the counter, not looking at me. "It's not what you think," she said. "Tell me what I think." She turned around, and I watched it happen, that precise recalibration, the way you recalibrate when a door you expected to be open turns out to be locked. She wasn't panicking. She was adjusting. "Okay," she said. "Yes, I was at the Coldplay show. With Cole. But James, keep going. He's getting married. Hannah. You know I told you this. He reached out because he wanted to talk before the wedding, and I thought it would be easier to do it in a crowd, somewhere neutral, somewhere that wasn't a coffee shop where you have to sit across from someone for 2 hours and make eye contact." She put her hands up slightly. Explanation. It was one night. It was closure. He needed to say some things, and I needed to hear them. And that's done now. That's actually done. And I know how this looks, but you told me you weren't going to see him. A pause. I know. I asked you directly. 6 weeks ago, I asked if you were going to meet him and you said, God, no. I know. I changed my mind. You changed your mind and didn't tell me. She set the glass down. Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. Like what? Like I did something wrong. I looked at her for a long moment. She held the look. Marissa was always good at holding a look. You didn't tell me, I said, because you knew I'd say no. Or at least ask questions. So you built a story that made it impossible for me to say no, because the story didn't include him. You told me your family had something going on. You sent me a photo at 5 in the afternoon that wasn't from your apartment. You texted me casually about a viral clip at 10 in the morning to test whether I'd seen it and come up with your cover story first. She was quiet. And then, I said, I sat at my parents' table on Saturday night and told my mother you couldn't do a video call because you were dealing with family stuff. I said that. In my parents' house. To my mother, James, I lied for you. I didn't know I was doing it, but I was. You put that in my mouth. She pressed her lips together. I could see her deciding something. What to give up, what to hold. I didn't ask you to cover for me. You didn't have to. That's how it works, right? You tell a good enough story and the people who love you just carry it without knowing. She looked away. First time she'd looked away. It was one evening, she said. It didn't mean anything. That's not the point. Then what is? I thought about the selfie. The jacket still on, the light all wrong. The bracelet on her wrist in the photo she sent me right before she walked out the door. If it was nothing, I said, you didn't need a lie to go do it. I didn't sleep there. I got back in my car and drove to my own apartment and sat in the parking garage for a while with the engine off. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't ready to cry. I was just very still. The way you get still after something you've been braced for finally hits you, and you realize the impact is actually smaller than the anticipation, and you don't know yet whether that's a relief or the beginning of a different kind of grief. She called twice. I didn't answer. She texted, I need you to understand, this isn't what it looks like. She texted, Cole and I are not together. We were never getting back together. I need you to believe me. She texted, you're making a decision based on a clip that doesn't tell you anything about what actually happened. I read all three. I didn't reply. I went inside and showered and lay in the dark. Monday morning, she sent a longer message. She was calmer, more precise. The emotional heat from the night before was gone, and in its place was something structured, an argument, a case. The closure narrative again, cleaner this time, with context, with timeline, with reasonable-sounding justifications for every choice she'd made. It was impressive, honestly. She knew how to write a defense. I read it once. I didn't reply. Tuesday morning, a different name appeared in my messages. Hi. This is Hannah Mercer, Cole's fiancée. I think we should talk. I called her back. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was the kind of flat that happens when you've been carrying something heavy for long enough that you stop performing the weight of it. Just a tired, clear voice. I saw the clip, she said. Someone sent it to me. I said, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. You didn't do anything. She told me the rest in about 7 minutes, without filler, without drama. Cole had reached out to Marissa 6 weeks ago. Not 2, not 3. 6. She knew because she'd seen the messages before he deleted them. She'd asked. He'd said it was just an old conversation. Loose ends. She'd believed him. Then the clip. She said, they planned the concert. He bought the tickets. He told me he was going out with colleagues. I heard my own voice from 2 days ago. You told me you weren't going to see him. I don't know what they are to each other, Hannah said. But it wasn't accidental. And it wasn't one night. I thought about Marissa's face when she turned around in the kitchen. The recalibration. The pivot. The way she'd said it was closure. Present tense. As if the story had already been approved somewhere. Thank you for calling me, I said. Yeah, Hannah said. And then, after a pause, are you going to be okay? It was a strange question from a stranger, but it landed somewhere real. Probably, I said. She said, good, and she hung up. I sat with that for a long time. Not the cheating, not the concert, not the clip, not the wristband. Still on her wrist at midnight on a street outside her building. Those things were bad, but they weren't the bottom of it. The bottom of it was simpler. Marissa hadn't said no to meeting my parents because her family had something going on. She'd said no because she wasn't ready to step into the real part of my life, the kitchen, the table, my dad's bad jokes, my mother's lasagna, while she still had one foot somewhere else. While she was still testing whether the old door had any warmth left in it. She didn't want to be caught between two things. So she made sure I would never know there were two things. Because I wanted to believe that trust was a form of love, that not asking questions was a form of respect, that swallowing a small suspicion was the mature choice. I helped her, unknowingly, faithfully, completely. I sat in my parents' house and made her absence sound reasonable and made her excuses sound real, and I did it because I had no idea I was doing it. That's the thing that doesn't leave you right away, not the lie. The architecture of it, the way it needed me to function. My mom texted me Wednesday. She said, "Everything okay? You seemed off when you left. Your dad and I have been thinking about you." I sat with that for a minute, thought about what to say. Then I typed, "I'm okay. I'll explain when I see you." The lasagna was great. She sent back a small heart. That was it. That was the whole thing, a small heart from my mother, and the knowledge that I was going to have to go back to that house and explain to two good people that the woman they'd been expecting never existed in quite the shape I'd presented her. Not because I lied. Because I believed so completely in the version of Marissa she gave me that I'd been walking around describing her to the world and never noticed the gaps. There's a kind of hurt that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't break dishes or say unforgivable things or collapse you in a parking lot. It's quieter. It lives in the small revision of the record, every memory that gets slightly relit now that you know what you know. The selfie that was never from her apartment, the forward goodnight text that was sent from a venue 3 miles away, the tired caption on a face that wasn't tired at all. She was there. She was present somewhere. She just wasn't present with me. That's the thing about being someone's safe option. You get the best version of them, the careful version, the considered version, the one who knows the right things to say, and what you never get is the whole thing. Because the whole thing is somewhere else, and they have reasons for that, and the reasons all sound like they make sense, and you let them make sense because you believe that trusting someone is the same thing as loving them. It's not. Trusting someone is believing what they show you. Loving someone is knowing the difference between what they show you and who they are. I didn't love Marissa in the end. I loved the version of her she gave me. And she gave me a very good version. Careful, reasonable, articulate. The version that never needed me to look too hard. I looked too hard. The whole thing came down.
Okay, so, now, something that the author want to let you know. Walking away quietly is not weakness. James didn't scream. He said what he needed to say, and he left. And that single act, leaving without chaos, carried more weight than any argument ever could. Because it told Marissa, "I'm not going to fight you for the truth. I already have it." Pay attention to what people avoid. Marissa didn't avoid James. She avoided his life. She avoided his parents. She avoided a 30-second video call. She avoided the table. She avoided every single thing that would have made the relationship more real. Because real is hard to maintain when you're running two versions of yourself. Trust is not a personality trait. It's a decision you make with information. When someone turns your trust into a reason you shouldn't ask questions, that's not love. That's management. The most dangerous lies don't sound like lies. They sound like maturity. I need space. Don't make this into something. I just want to be present when I meet them. Every single one of those sentences is something a healthy person could say, and every single one of them, in this story, was a lock on a door James wasn't supposed to open. If someone keeps dodging the parts of your life that actually matter, they're not shy. They're keeping their options open. And you deserve someone whose options closed the day they chose you. If you're going through something like this right now, you're not crazy. You're not overreacting. And the feeling in your gut that something is off? That's not insecurity. That's your brain doing exactly what it's supposed to do. If this story hit you, drop a comment.